The classroom was buzzing with low chatter when it happened. A sudden shovel-loud laughter, and then silence. Everyone turned their heads. No one expected her to do anything. She was the quiet one. Always had been. Never raised her hand, never spoke, unless directly called on. To most, she was invisible. But in just 10 seconds, that illusion shattered. Her name was Selina Ward, a soft-spoken girl with deep, knowing eyes who had mastered the art of blending in. She wasn't timid, just watchful. While other students talked over each other or played social games, Selina observed. She listened. She remembered. And unbeknownst to anyone, she had been preparing her whole life for a moment just like this. The boy who shoved her was Troy Bennett, the self-proclaimed king of Northwood High. Loud, cocky, and never seen without his pack of followers. He thrived on fear, on control, and most of all on attention. Selina, however, was a puzzle he couldn't solve. She didn't flinch at his taunts. She didn't blush or run when he barked insults. Her silence unnerved him. It was power he didn't understand. So he tried to break her. What Troy didn't know, and what the whole class would learn that day, was that silence isn't the absence of strength. It's the sign of restraint, of discipline. And when Selina finally chose to move, to speak, to act, she would change everything. Not just for herself, but for every quiet girl who had ever been underestimated. And it all started with 10 unforgettable seconds. From the moment Selina stepped into Northwood High as a freshman, she became a mystery wrapped in silence. She wasn't the type to stumble over her words, she simply didn't waste them. Her hair was always tied back in a neat braid, her outfits plain but spotless, and her presence so still it unnerved people. Teachers often called on her just to break the quiet. Students whispered about her like she was some myth-weird mute or worse. But Selina didn't care. She walked the halls like a shadow, untouched by gossip, immune to the stares. And that's precisely what irritated Troy Bennett. Troy, the golden boy of Northwood, quarterback of the football team, son of a local businessman, older brother playing for a top college team. He ruled the school like it was his kingdom. Hallways were his throne, and fear his favorite weapon. He teased the shy, flattered the insecure, and mocked anyone who didn't bow to his charm. But Selina, she didn't play the game. When he bumped into her in the hall, she didn't even glance at him. When he cracked a joke at her expense, she simply blinked. Her indifference felt like a spotlight exposing how small he really was. That's why Troy escalated. At first it was whispers, spreading lies about how Selina talked to herself or refused to speak because she was crazy. Then came the snide remarks loud enough for her to hear, the smirks in the cafeteria, the paper balls during lectures. And through it all, Selina never reacted, never gave him the victory he craved, until that day in English class. The teacher had stepped away. Selina stood alone at the front, preparing to give her quiet presentation. The room barely noticed, until Troy rose from the back, his smirk daring her to stop him. He walked up casually, almost playfully, and shoved her shoulder. Not hard, just enough to humiliate. But that tiny push would unleash a storm he never saw coming. Because this time, Selina wasn't going to stay silent. The moment Troy's hand touched her shoulder, the room shifted. His friends chuckled. Some students turned to look, expecting the usual Selina freezing, maybe mumbling, maybe just walking away. But that didn't happen. Selina stumbled for half a second, then straightened. Slowly, deliberately. Her eyes, calm and unshaken, locked onto Troy's with a quiet intensity that drained the smirk from his face. The classroom fell into a hush. You could hear the hum of the overhead lights, the ticking of the wall clock, even the rustle of someone's backpack zipper stopping mid-pull. Something had changed. Troy tried to keep control. He puffed out his chest and laughed again. Voice louder this time, like he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. "You got something to say, Mouse," he jeered. Selina didn't say a word. Instead, she dropped her binder to the floor, its thud echoing louder than any shout. Then, in a movement so fluid it looked rehearsed, she raised her hands, stepped forward, and in one swift motion grabbed Troy's wrist, twisted it behind his back, and pressed him against the whiteboard. The sound of his body hitting the board was sharp final. His gasp filled the room. No one moved. Not his friends. Not the students watching wide-eyed. A couple of phones were out now, trembling slightly in hands that didn't dare breathe too loud. Selina leaned in close, her voice barely above a whisper, but clear and cutting like glass. "You think being loud makes you powerful," she said, steady and sure. "You think silence means fear. Let me educate you." Troy didn't speak. He couldn't. For once, the boy who always had something to say had nothing. In that frozen moment, every unspoken word Selina had buried for years found its form in action, and the classroom would never look at her the same again. Just as Selina released Troy's arm, he stumbled back, cradling his shoulder, his breath shallow and shocked. His arrogance had vanished, replaced by something he wasn't used to feeling: fear. The teacher walked in at that exact moment, her expression turning to alarm as she saw Troy rubbing his arm and Selina calmly picking up her binder from the floor. "What's going on here?" the teacher asked, eyes bouncing between them. Selina didn't flinch. She turned to the class, then looked the teacher square in the eye. "He put his hands on me," she said evenly. I responded. That was it, no theatrics, no raised voice. Just the truth wrapped in poise. The room stayed silent for a long second. Then the whispers began. A few students exchanged glances, eyes wide with a new understanding. The girl they had labeled as strange, mute, or invisible had just shattered every label. And by lunch, a clip of the confrontation recorded from 2 separate angles had made its way to nearly every phone in school. By 1:00 p.m., the principal's office had received a dozen witness accounts and multiple video submissions. It wasn't just about the shove, it was about months of harassment that had finally boiled over into that 10-second moment. Troy was suspended for 3 weeks, his spotless reputation cracked and flaking, his swagger down the halls replaced by quick steps and lowered eyes. As for Selina, she didn't become the center of attention. That wasn't her style. But the atmosphere around her changed. Teachers treated her with new respect. Classmates moved aside for her in the halls, not out of fear, but recognition. When she stood to speak in class, now the room fell silent. Not because they were waiting for a mistake, but because they didn't want to miss a word. Selina Ward hadn't asked to be seen. But now that she was, people finally listened. Weeks passed. And though Selina never sought the spotlight, something powerful began to ripple through Northwood High. One afternoon in the library, a timid girl named Jenna Ruiz, her voice barely above a whisper, approached Selina with tearful eyes. "I've been getting bullied too," she confessed. "I didn't know what to do until I saw what you did." Selina didn't hesitate. She offered a small, warm smile and replied gently, "Silence is okay. But it doesn't mean you have to stay quiet forever. When the moment's right, your voice will know exactly what to do." From that conversation, something remarkable began. Together, they launched a self-defense and confidence club for girls. It wasn't just about fighting, it was about reclaiming space-building boundaries and recognizing inner strength. Each week, more students joined. Selina, once invisible in the halls, now stood surrounded by laughter, focus, and shared empowerment. She never tried to become a leader, but she became one anyway. And every time she looked at those girls stretching after practice, she knew her silence had once protected her. But her voice used at the right time had changed everything. Never mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes the quietest souls carry the deepest strength. When they choose to speak, they speak not just for themselves, but for everyone who's ever been overlooked. If you found this story powerful, Tell us in the comments, have you ever underestimated someone quiet or found your own strength in silence? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more inspiring stories that remind us of the strength we all carry inside. Stay with us, because the quietest moments often carry the loudest lessons.